Yes.
I'm Lorene Sisquoc, and I'm enrolled with the Sill Apache tribe of Oklahoma and descendant of Mountain Cahuilla, also a descendant of Tohono-O'odham and Paiute tribes. And I live here in Riverside, and I've worked here at Sherman Indian High School since 1982, and actually was born here, grew up on the campus here, as our family has worked here for many years. When you bring up repatriation, there's a lot of things come to mind because I work here in a museum, and of course we've had some objects that were ceremonial and funerary objects, the beautiful memories bowls with the holes poked through them, with that hole being poked through them, symbolized that was like being like the spirit let go, or that it was affiliated with somebody who had passed away and was probably put with them, and so that hole was put there to commemorate that, or to let that spirit go. And because everything we make has spirit to it, and has prayers to it, and has connections to us, to our ancestors, to all sorts of meanings, deep meanings that can't even be described. And so those objects, those are pretty ancient, old objects, and so those were here in our collection. So we have, what we do is we report them, and let the community out there know, hopefully the tribal communities that they belong to, and we put them away, because for years when I came in they had been on display, but those are things that you don't put on display. And so with our museum, that's about the main connection I've had with that, and that was years ago. And but in our own family, I have two ancestors that come to mind. That is not just an oral tradition story. I mean, it's documented. And one was our ancestor, Chief Mangas Coloradas of our Apache tribe. And in about 1863, he went in good faith to meet with the United States government, the United States military, and went to meet with them, and he was killed. And the next day they decapitated him, took his deceased body, decapitated him, took his head, and there's several different stories, but they said they boiled his head and then sent it off to be studied, because he was a famous chief for one thing, and he was known for being a very big man, large man. Things like, I read things like, they said his skull was the same size as Daniel Webster, just awful things, and his skull was never found. So when I think of all these museums that have all these skulls and body parts and just unknown, that's somebody's great grandfather. That's somebody, and he was a great leader in our tribe, and this devastated the tribe. And there's a whole lot of other things that went along with that, but it was never found. And I know many family members and tribal members that have tried to track that down, because it was pretty documented, but it's never been found. The other was on our Cahuilla side. One of our relatives worked here at the school. She would have, Leela, she was my Cahuilla grandfather's first cousin. And so through her I learned a lot about our family and family stories and things like that. And one of the stories she told me was that her grandmother, which would be our great-great-grandmother, Tomasa, that she was buried at Soboba Cemetery, which is a local tribal reservation here. She was buried, I think she was buried in 1919. She had died from, her and her son had died from the Spanish influenza. And the year of her anniversary, to the date of her 1 year anniversary, and that's when we usually have the memorial service for our loved ones, is 1 year to the date of their death. And they said that they had the her ceremony, the 1 year anniversary in the day, and that evening people came and dug up her body and took her head. And so we heard that story, and it was just like, it's kind of like a family story, and you're just like, wow, and just you wonder, is that true, or how that happened, or what. And then eventually I was working with a lady here, Jean Keller. She was doing her dissertation here at the museum, and so we'd always sit and talk while she was researching, and I was helping her research, and I told her that story. And then one day she came to the museum and she says, "You're not going to believe what I have." And I said, "What was it?" And she showed me this article, and she had talked to a historian friend of hers, from Riverside historian, and he had looked it up and found the documents, found the newspaper articles, 2 separate newspaper articles in 1919, and it said that the year of her anniversary, that 5 white men dressed in black drove up to the cemetery, and the caretaker was there, but what could he do? He found, I don't know, it didn't say when he found them, at the beginning of when they started digging her up, or the end, I'm not sure, but that they dug her up and took her head. And it's just like, what were these people doing? Why, where, and so those are what I think of, my relatives, my not so far back ancestors are one of those skulls on somebody's shelf, or collection. And there's other accounts in our tribes of that, of things like that. Even in Oklahoma, where our Fort Sill Apache tribe is, where my grandmother and my mother is buried, is the Fort Sill Apache Prisoner of War Cemetery, and that's where Geronimo's grave is. And there's all kinds of stories of whether his has been dug up, and so it's just like, it's just a common thing. And to me, it's not. It's personal. It's and it shouldn't be a common thing. It's just really something very personal. These are our ancestors. These are our relatives, and they deserve to be put back where they were, where they belong. So that they can rest in peace, is what we believe.